the project people in our nation, and that we journey with them in hoping that we get to reconciliation with the Aboriginal community as soon as possible. And whilst we're on that, can I just simply say that we should be coming up to the voting on the referendum for the voice, and I think that we should all make an effort to have the voice to Parliament enshrined in our Constitution when the opportunity comes up in October. I'm going to speak in English only because my Malayalam is so bad that if I did speak in Malayalam, I think it would be probably only myself who would understand. And I can do this because my mother is not coming here today, otherwise she would get into, I'd be in serious trouble with her. I just wanted to briefly acknowledge, the role of the women and the whole issues around gender equality. And can I just point to how advanced we are in Kerala in using the Marvakatayam and all of those issues that go with that, because that is the basis upon which we empower any community. If you want to empower a community, if you want to make a community significantly engaged, you always engage the women in that community. And all of you all are fantastic examples of that. I wanted to also acknowledge my mother, who unfortunately was not able to come here. Amma's got a bad back, and she's, as I just explained to Sumod, Amma is 89 years old, and she is still a person who drives everywhere here. She has no issue with driving. She has her own Facebook account, she has her own Twitter account, and I was explaining to the others earlier, I came to the house one day, and she said, Suresh, I've never seen the cherry blossoms in Japan. And I said, yeah, that's true. She said, I'm going there next week. And off she went. And then 1 year she went to Japan, to China, to Laos, to India, to Sri Lanka, to Melbourne, and to Sydney. And she was about 83 or 84 years old at that stage, and she just gets up and goes when she wants to. She's an incredibly empowered person, and she has, through her life, has brought up 4 children, and now devotes her time to our children and her grandchildren. So, it is just that empowerment that comes from our whole system of the way we do things in Kerala that really should be the example for every other country in the world. Some years ago, the premier here was a chap named Dr. Jeff Gallup. Jeff is actually, as we speak, in Kerala, and he was a huge and firm believer in everything that Kerala did should be emulated in places like here. So, and the reason I'm telling you that is just to give you an idea of how much our culture is significant in trying to engage the women here also. Australian women are not considered to be, unfortunately, treated in the same way that we have the whole system in Kerala. So there's a significant amount of work to be done. I did briefly just also touch on Krishna and Aneesh's case and Aryan, and I won't say anything more than just to say that on the night of the decision coming down on that Thursday, I had 14 phone calls from people around Australia, all of whom were in exactly the same circumstances. And interestingly, which I don't understand why, but about 10 of them are Malayalis. And I'm not sure why that's the case, but there are Malayali nurses who are dealing with issues around disability, and there are issues around epilepsy and various other conditions as well. So I'm hoping that I will be able to help all of them, but we're certainly working on that, and we will hopefully get all of them to remain here as permanent residents. I just want you to also remember that we in Australia are discriminating against people who have a condition or who have a disability. I went through the Immigration Act in India, and there's nothing in our Immigration Act that talks about disability. If you have a disability, it is not considered to be a problem. It is a consideration that needs to be taken into account. So when we in Australia stand up in public and talk about the human rights abuses in other countries, that is completely and utterly hypocritical, because we are performing much more human rights abuses here than we are overseas, than countries overseas are doing. And there are very, very few countries that still lock up our refugees like we do in Australia, all around the world. We lock them up in Manus, we lock them up in Nauru, and we lock them up in Sydney, Melbourne, etc. That has to stop. And whilst I remain here, I will always be fighting for those issues, because that's very, very significant for me. So I always find it very, very hypocritical that Australia stands up and complains about human rights abuses in China and in India and various other places, when in actual fact most of the human rights abuses are also occurring here. The only other thing I wanted to mention was in regard to the Sevanam and the work you do in preparing the ministerial intervention request for Krishna and Aneesh at Bahrain. We emphasized how much work they're doing in the community, and what we pointed to was the work that you do at Sevanam. I knew nothing about the Sevanam group until Simone invited me to come to an event last year, and that's when I first found out, and I've done a lot of reading about what you do. You do an amazing amount of work, and you do, for the size of group you are, your impact is extraordinary. You look after people, you look after international students, you look after anyone who needs help. And I think you need to be commended for that. And that is something that we keep pointing to as a fundamental part of our culture that we've brought here. And we are actually educating Australians about the value of community. And that, I think, is something that you can do really well. The only thing I will ask also, if you're looking at assistance to people, don't forget the Aboriginal people, the First Nations people. First Nations issues are very significant for me. I'm very close to the First Nations communities. I have the colours that have been given to me by the Yamatji community and the Noongar community as a brother in their community, so I'm part of their community. So there is so much that they look for from us who've gone through the colonial issues in India, that we can bring and teach them how to deal with it. So, and you'll always be surprised at how much, every time I meet with them, they always say, we don't just share the color of the skin. We have so much in common in our cultures, between particularly the Malayali culture and the people from the First Nations communities. Even some of the words that we use for different things and places we name in India and Kerala in particular are very similar to the names of places here, the traditional names. So, look, I guess the essential difference is that, and I point people to everyone, I've been here now for 49 years, 48 years. I came here when I was 15 from Bangalore. I was studying in Bangalore. I was born in Singapore, grew up in Brunei, went to Bangalore to study, did my ICSE there, and came here when I was 15. And that's 40, 49, 48 years ago. So I've learned a lot about what we need to do to get by in this country, and I will keep fighting for all of you all to come with me on the journey to wherever we're going to get to. Thank you for that. I'm not going to bore you. I'll leave you with all of that. And anytime you want to, if your flyers said come and have a coffee with me, I'm always a person who loves coffee, so I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh Rajan, for your inspiring words. Now I would like to invite Krishna Aneesh. Krishna is a accomplished professional who is dedicated to promoting women's empowerment. Please give a warm welcome to Krishna Aneesh. പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് എടുത്തു പറയാൻ സുരേഷ് രാജൻ സാറിനോടാണ് ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ട് സാറിൻ്റെ ആ സപ്പോർട്ട് ആ ഒരു ഗൈഡൻസ് ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ എനിക്ക് ഒരിക്കലും ഇത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. വാക്കില്ല സാറിനോട് നന്ദി പറയണേ. പിന്നെ ഇവിടെയുള്ള എല്ലാവരുടെയും സപ്പോർട്ടിനും എല്ലാത്തിനും എന്നെ കൂടെ വന്ന് എല്ലാവർക്കും താങ്ക്സ്. ഈ സേവന ഗ്രൂപ്പിൽ വന്നതിന് ശേഷമാണ് ഞങ്ങൾ സുരേഷ് സാറിനും സുമോദിയായിട്ടും പറഞ്ഞ പരിചയപ്പെടാനുള്ള ആ ഒരു നിമിത്തമൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടായത്. എല്ലാത്തിനും ദൈവത്തിൻ്റെ ആ ഒരു കൈകൾ ഞങ്ങൾ താങ്ങി കൊണ്ടുപോയ പോലെ ഉണ്ട്. ഇത്രയും പെട്ടെന്ന് ഇത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുമെന്ന് ഒരിക്കലും വിചാരിച്ചിരുന്നു.